All right, welcome back to the garage. Today's a special day, so I got a helper. Abby, say what's up to everybody.
What's up, everybody?
Right on. Today's a big day because we're going to be doing brakes. I've got a Wilwood kit over here. Let's see here. This is kit number 140-12271. This is made for a 67, 68 Camaro. It's got everything that you need. The rotors down here are 12.88 inches or 13. If you like to round like I do, all the brackets, all the hardware, the hubs, bearings, all the good stuff. Let's get into it. Okay, the first thing that we got to do is make sure that this brake kit is going to fit with the wheels that I'm going to use. These wheels are Billet Specialty 17-inch. The instructions say that the radius of the brake with the rotor and caliper on there is 7.4 inches. So as long as I've got more than 14.8 in there, then it should work just fine. I've measured it. I do. It should be good. I think it's just over 15 and a quarter, something like that. Next up, we also got to make sure that the bolt pattern here works with the bolt pattern of the wheels. These are 5 by 4 3/4. This has got a dual bolt pattern, so 4.5 or 4 3/4. So my lovely assistant over here is spinning the studs in. We're going to get those going right away and move on. The instructions say to torque these down to 77 foot-pounds. I'm going to go ahead and bolt the rotors to it to make it easier to clamp in the vise and torque those down. So let's get these done. Okay, now that I've got those studs torqued down, I can start packing the bearings. Here's the inner bearing, the outer bearing, and the seals. I've got some Lucas Red and Tacky grease here. I'm going to pack up these bearings, put those in. Okay, I got the inner seals put in place, packed up with grease and installed, as well as the seals. These rotors are directional, so one's for the right, one's for the left. Next, I can move on to mounting this flat bracket here. It mounts to the spindle. They send you different hardware for it depending on your configuration. I mean, this tapered bolt obviously goes in the tapered hole. There's a long one and a short one. I'll be using the long one because I have the Ride-Tech spindles. They also give you these long bolts, which should go in the bottom hole here. But since I have the Ride-Tech spindles, and I've got some grade 8 hardware that came with it, I can actually just bolt it here. Otherwise, I'd have to drill out this hole. Since it's threaded here, you might as well use it. Otherwise, you drill that out and use those long bolts, but we're not going to do that. So I've got this bracket bolted on here, just mocked up. Now I can fit the hub on there and make sure that this bracket is parallel to the brake rotor. Let's do that. Okay, I got the hub and the rotor mounted on here. Whenever the instructions say to use 3 shims on that guy there, and I don't know if you can see. Slide the light over here. If you can see that, but that flat bracket is not quite parallel with the rotor. Turn this guy. A little better view. Yeah, if you follow right along the side there. The bottom's actually in a little bit, so I want to put another shim in there. I did this side and then I did this side over here. And I'll show you it. And I put 4 shims in it because I put this one on, noticed it was not quite there. And so then I put another shim in this guy and it's still not quite parallel, I don't think. See if I can show down the side of the rotor and then down the side of this guy. And yeah, it seems like this bottom part here is inboard just a little bit. So I'm going to add another shim. Add 2 shims on that side and 1 shim on this side. It should be good. Let's do that. Okay, upon further review, it seems like 4 shims is about perfect. I put a straight edge on here and measured over to the rotor on both ends of that. And she's about perfect there. And on the other side, quick pro tip for you. Whenever you're doing this, whenever you need to add or remove the shims, instead of pulling the entire hub assembly off, you can just pull the rotor off and get you a box end wrench, and you can access the bolt down here. Pull that guy out enough to put some shims in or take some shims out, and it works really good. Now I can move on to the actual caliper bracket here. I've got this one kind of halfway mocked up, but before I get crazy, I've got to pull the hubs off, put Loctite on those, and torque them down. So let's do that. Okay, I got those Loctited and torqued down. The upper bolt got 120 foot-pounds, and the lower one got 100 foot-pounds. Cleaned my spindle up nice and pretty. I'm going to throw a little bit more grease on the inside of these guys, so they've got lots of grease in them. And then I can slap this all back together. Wilwood's nice enough to give you these smaller washers. They're just a little bit smaller than the regular washers, and that's because the caps that screw on these, if you use the bigger washer, they won't screw all the way on. So use the smaller washer, then it'll work good. But yeah, let's grease those up, throw those back in. Okay, I got the hubs mounted back on here. They're looking real good. They spin nicely. Put the dust caps on, keep it clean, keep the grease out of everywhere else. Now we can move on to the radial caliper mount bracket, which is this guy here. Shaped like this. It's kind of goes on one way, and that way is this way. Like this. Bolts, shims in between. It says start with 2 shims and see where we're at. So let's do that. Okay, caliper bracket is on there with 2 shims on either side. Put the rotor back on. Now we can move on to test fitting the caliper here. The calipers are directional. This is the driver's side. They say to lube the studs. These studs here with a little bit of light oil. I used some air tool oil. That seems to be what I had. It's nice light oil. It says put 1 shim on each stud. I'll throw them in the floor and then I'll put them on there. Okay, I got the shim underneath the caliper, got the caliper mounted here, got it bolted down nice and solid. Doing this to check and make sure that it's centered, the caliper's centered on the rotor. If it's not, then I can change the shims on that caliper bracket to move it inboard or even outboard a little bit, but it looks real good to me. I don't know if you can tell, but it looks real good. You spin this thing, it spins nice and true. Right along there. Looks cool. Let's check the other side. Other side's the same thing. It's nice and centered on here. Looks real good. I know it's hard to tell with all the black and the shiny. I do have a question on this rotor. I don't know if you can tell, but there's a flat spot. See how there's a flat spot ground into that? It's not like that on the other one. And I just wonder if that's to balance the thing or what. But anyway, if you happen to know, let me know. Now I can pull these off here and put thread locker on those bolts and torque those down. I think 77 foot-pounds on either side. So let's do that. Take the calipers off and then do it all over again. Okay, before I put thread locker on those 2 bolts there, I want to make sure that that caliper is centered on the rotor. And one thing that I haven't done yet is tighten down the hub bolt here. So I got to torque that to 12 foot-pounds. I've got instructions for that over here. Torque it down to 12 foot-pounds and then back it off 1 flat and pin it. So I've got a little torque wrench here and torque those down, pin them up, put that cap back on and retest fit that rotor and caliper. Okay, I've got the rotor and the caliper back on here, and one of the ways that you can check to make sure that rotor is centered, or the caliper is centered over the rotor, is to slip the brake pads in and see how much space you have between the brake pads and the rotor. That inner brake pad went in just fine, but the outer brake pad runs into the rotor there. So I'm going to pull a shim out of this thing and see if we can't move it out a little bit and see how it goes. The same thing on the other side. Okay, I've pulled the calipers off and I've got them over here and I'm looking at them. And I noticed that the inner brake pad is nice and tight against the caliper housing, whereas the outer is not. And if you look, you can see there's a gap in between there, about the width of a shim. So I'm going to throw this down here, use this pry bar and press on it and see if I can't get those pistons to kind of sink in a little bit and give me a little bit more room. And as well, while I was monkeying around with this thing, I've got that caliper bracket taken off, and I want to just double check that this flat bracket is truly parallel to the rotor, especially now that I've got the rotor in place. I'll set you up here and show you how I'm measuring this and what I've got going on. See if you can see that. Okay, if I take this piece of square stock here, This is just 1-inch square aluminum, which is pretty straight. And I lay it across this flat bracket like so, and then I take me a little stack of shims like this and slide them along the rotor. I can see that at the top here, just barely touches that that piece of square stock, but whenever I get down around here, it runs right into it. And if I remove a shim, then it slides, then it's nice and tight again. It's a little better anyway. So I think I want to pull this flat bracket back off there and take a shim out of the bottom of it, because I want to make sure that those brake pads are exactly parallel to that rotor. Okay, I took that shim out of there and I tried it again, and it seems to be a little bit closer. Like if I compare it to that side over there, which has 4 shims in it, there's a full shim difference between the bottom and the top. Whereas this here, there's less than a full shim difference. Let's see if I can show you what I mean. I'll set you up here and give you a good visual representation of what I'm talking about. So I've got a stack of shims here. Here's 3, 6, 7, 8 shims. If I hold my square stock on here, down here at the bottom, 8 shims fits nice and tight, nice and snug there, like it's touching. Up here, if I take one, it won't fit. 8 shims won't fit, but if I take one shim off, then there's about half a shim distance between the stack of shims here and that square stock. So that's like half a shim difference. On the other side, I have a full shim difference with more shims in here. So I'm going to take a shim out of here on the other side too. At least then they're even. It's not completely parallel, but it's pretty close. Okay, that's starting to look better. I put that flat bracket on there with 3 shims on it, torqued it down, used thread locker, then put the radial mount bracket on with 1 shim, and put the caliper back on there, tighten that down. Now I've got about a shim distance between the pads and the rotor all the way around, so that's looking good. Now I've got to make sure that these pads are level with the top of the rotor here, and I may need to, I'll measure that with a flat piece of steel here. I've just got this little gauge, set that on there, and then you can kind of see, I don't know if you can see or not, there's a little difference. The pads are a little low. I'll take a look at that and see if I need to add a shim underneath these studs here. But for now, I can go ahead and pull this back off, put Loctite on the radial caliper mount bolts, and torque those down. I think they get 77 foot-pounds. And then I can look at this. Okay, I got this all put back together. It's real good. I torqued these lock nuts down to 30 pounds. I also torqued these Allen head screws down to 85 inch-pounds. This side is all done. It's all done. It's good. I added a shim. There's a shim underneath these studs here. Actually, there's 2 shims underneath each of these studs, and 1 shim on the radial bracket, and then 3 shims on the flat bracket. So that's how that's set up. It's all good. It turns real nice. I'm real happy with it. Just got to rinse and repeat on the other side. Let's get that finished up. Now, I was afraid that I was going to have to take this hub back off there to get to this bolt here, but I've got this handy dandy little torque wrench here that I can slide right up in there and get on that bolt, and it worked just fine. So didn't have to pull the hub off. I'm rocking and rolling. Things are looking good. Okay, passenger side is all done the same. 1 shim on the flat bracket. 3 shims on the flat bracket, 1 shim on the radial bracket, 2 shims underneath the studs, torque to 30, torque to 85 inch-pounds. Last piece is this little pin that needs to go in here. It just sets right across here and here and keeps the caliper, I assume it just keeps the caliper kind of separated wherever it goes, but I just got to tighten that up on there. I went ahead and threw a tire on the other side here. See how it fits, see how it works, and yeah, it's looking real good. I was a little concerned because of the valve stem. See the valve stems on the inside of the wheel there, but it clears It clears with lots of space, actually. See that around in there? Anyway, that is my Wilwood brake kit. It's on there. I've still got like a lot of work to do this thing, but the brakes are looking pretty good so far. I got to do some flex lines from the back of the calipers there up to the junction between the hard line and the soft line. Anyway, got to do those on both sides, but other than that, it's ticking right along. I'm going to end this video right here. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions or comments, or if I screwed anything up that you noticed. Anyway, appreciate it. We'll see you later.